We need to be very clear about how we target and retarget customers to get them back in. And I think that has been one of the most important things we've learned.
This is the Boxoffice Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Boxoffice Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. And in this week's episode, we are continuing our coverage of the UKCA conference, the annual event bringing together the UK and Ireland's top exhibition circuits and independents. Representing that side of the business, we have Sharon Reid, the director of marketing and partnerships over at Cinema First, an industry group that focuses on movie-going initiatives and research. Sharon joins us in the second half of this episode. Before we get there, we've got joining me here once again, Pahle and Chad Kennerk from Boxoffice Pro. We'll be talking everything news, including the final forecast of Disney's Snow White, to add as much of an accent as we possibly can to a moribund March 2025 box office here. But let's start the way we usually do. Chad, you were the only one out of the three of us that went to the movies last weekend. You might have been one of the only three people that went to the movies last weekend because it was the worst weekend on record in 2025. I think something like 55 million total, every movie. It was a disaster, but at least you saw a good movie. Does that count?
Yeah, I saw Black Bag. I love Cate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender. I think this is superior Soderbergh. It's a tight, tense, character-driven thriller with lots of that cat and mouse intrigue, and so I really loved it. Yeah,
it's theatrical Soderbergh, not direct to
exactly. Yeah. And it's not like Michael Bay explosions or anything happening in terms of action, but explosive nonetheless. With the plot, has a really sharp, smart script.
You know what? I'm going to go out. I'm going to defend streaming for 1 second. Please, nobody listening, go after me and my family. It's okay. We all watch streaming movies. The Soderbergh streaming movies in the world of like streaming output from major filmmakers is the best out there. It's the best out there. I really like No Sudden Move. That was direct to Max. He's got some really interesting movies out there that have been exclusive to streaming. But at the end of the day, I tend to enjoy his movies more in a theater. And I'm really looking forward to finding the time in this pre-CinemaCon run-up to make it out to one theater to check it out. Rebecca, anything on your list?
I don't think I've seen any of the Soderbergh streamers.
Even Behind the Candelabra? I don't know if that even qualifies as streaming. That was direct to HBO.
Well, that was a limited series,
pre-streaming. Right? No, it's just it's an actual movie.
Oh, it was an actual TV movie. Okay.
Yeah, it went theatrical overseas, but they just couldn't find the economics to work for a theatrical release domestically.
I mean, maybe I'm just lazy, but it's like I feel like if I miss a Steven Soderbergh streaming movie, there's going to be another one in like 2 months. I'm going to wait. I'm going to look at the consensus to decide which ones to watch and do a big binge catch up at some point in the next couple of decades. There are a lot of movies I haven't watched. I got a long list.
Well, let's take a quick turn from talking about individual movies to the exhibition business. Unfortunately, a very troubling development here going on in Miami as the Miami Herald reports that the O Cinema, one of the last independent art house cinemas in the city of Miami, currently in the city of Miami Beach, is embroiled in a scandal right now, not of their own making, unfortunately. The way I understand it, the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land was originally slated to play at the O Cinema. From this reporting, it seems like the city of Miami Beach, through its mayor, pressured the cinema to pull that title from its programming. The cinema initially acquiesced, but then went back and said, no, we're a movie theater. We believe in this title. We're going to program it to show it to people. And that was enough for the city to lose its mind and say, hey, no more lease for you, no more funding for you. Guys, a very troubling situation here that might have First Amendment right implications. But in the middle of all this conversation, because to me it looks like a very textbook ACLU case, is the fact that we don't really know from where we're sitting what that lease says exactly and what the cinema is or isn't beholden to. Ultimately, what I want to applaud and defend is the programmers and the cinema's rights to say, we are a community cinema. We believe in programming the titles that are relevant for our audience. And we're going to take this title, like No Other Land, which recently won Best Documentary at the Academy Awards. And we believe that is going to play. And we're not going to tell our audiences what to think about it, what to endorse it, to not endorse it. We're simply offering a programming choice. I don't think that should be something that cinemas should be afraid of. And I am embarrassed for the city of Miami Beach to even put us in this situation.
Yeah, it's definitely a slippery slope. I mean, you think back to, there have been documentaries along the lines of like Dinesh D'Souza, or anti-vax documentaries, documentaries that are more right-wing politically. I've never heard of a situation of a theater that made the decision to play one of those having their lease potentially pulled. Like, it's not a matter of which side of the political spectrum you're on, really. Like, where does this end if the mayor thinks that the very presence of a certain community in the film means it shouldn't be played? It's ridiculous.
Programming a film isn't endorsing what's in the film. It's merely offering the option for audiences to come and see the film and make up their own mind. I struggle to see the sense in the city of Miami Beach's actions here. This is a legal case. We're not here to give out legal advice. Don't misconstrue anything we say here as such. We're merely expressing our disappointment that a movie theater is not given the right to program the films it believes relevant for its audience. And our full support goes out to our colleagues down at the O Cinema. And we really have to say it, guys, it's not just that this is happening, it's that it's happening to one of the last operating independent and art house cinemas in Miami. As listeners to this podcast know, I spent about 10 years of my life living in Miami. I have a lot of good friends there. I wasn't there when the O Cinema opened. I would have loved for there to be an art house cinema in Miami, pre-2004 when I lived there to help me out. I had to make do with whatever I could find at Lion Video. And at the time, the Regal South Beach was the only real cinema that programmed anything beyond the major studios. So the fact that you have a bastion, you have an oasis here, like the O Cinema, giving Miami cinephiles great programming, and for that to be at risk for what I don't even find to be a considerably alarming programming choice. This is a film that just came off an Academy Award.
It won the best documentary Oscar, and I mean it's about obviously the situation evolving with Gaza and Israel, but it is very notably made by Israeli and Palestinian filmmakers.
Yeah, and people are going to have reactions that are politically tinged to this subject matter. It's understandable that that's the case.
That's the point. That's the point of airing a film like this, is that people get together in that environment, and then maybe go, to a coffee shop inside the theater or to a bar next door to talk about it afterwards. I mean, so you're not just watching it by yourself, just in your room on your sofa. I mean, this is how this film should be seen, to spark conversation and to evolve people's mindsets on a very complicated issue. Evolve in one way, evolve in another way. That doesn't matter.
The film is played for over 4 weeks at Film Forum here in New York City.
It's playing at BAM.
It's playing at BAM in Brooklyn. I mean, it's a situation where it is being programmed and it is playing in cities with a high concentration of Jewish population, and there has not been any reported actions of anti-Semitism based on the film. Now, if you feel, if you like it, if you don't like it, if you have a discussion around it, again, that is the point. We're not here to say what is and isn't anti-Semitism. By no means are we getting into that bear trap of rhetoric. But the fact that audiences aren't allowed to engage this because a mayor of beach resort corner of a dysfunctional city deems it that way is unacceptable. I am nothing short of incensed by the situation. That's as far as we're going to wade into politics here, unfortunately. But we do have to criticize that. I think in any way, shape, and form, anytime any elected political figure takes action against cinema programming a film, regardless of what that film is, honestly, regardless of what that film is, if it's a film that's commercially available to audiences, even if it's working through independent distribution, as No Other Land is in this case, I think audiences deserve a right to make their own mind if they want to see it or not.
Daniel, we're all here fans of film history. It's a fascinating subject. And I mean, the sort of relationship sometimes adversarial between the cinema industry in the United States and the government. That goes back as far as there has been a cinema industry in the United States.
Many years,
that's in many ways the foundation, one of the bedrocks of this industry as a whole. Like, no, we can rate our own films. We can decide what's going to be on our own films. We can decide what we're going to show. Government, you do not need to come in and tell us what to do. Like, we will handle our own.
Rebecca, it's a red line. It's a red line for this industry. Government involvement in programming is a red line for the American cinema industry. And we have to point this out and speak out against it. We really do. It's something that, as I mentioned earlier, we don't know all the facts. We don't know what that lease says, if there's any clauses or anything there. We don't want to be in a situation where anything we say is at all misconstrued for legal advice. We're not lawyers. But from what has been reported in the Miami Herald so far, to say we are deeply concerned is understating the situation right now going on in Miami. Now, since we don't have all the facts in front of us, we will be providing updates to this story as they become available. Let's move on, guys, here to our box office coverage, because the rest of exhibition seems to be on the ropes here. We are officially under a year-over-year basis, the 2024 box office. And that is not a good sign. Unfortunately, we are coming off the worst performing weekend of the year at the box office. Novocaine from Paramount Pictures topping the weekend with only 8.8 million. Now, if you remember our March preview episode here on this podcast a couple weeks back, I had previewed this would always be a very bumpy weekend, saying that between Novocaine, Black Bag, and Opus, 3 major titles, they might add up to 25 million. Well, guess what? Throw The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie in there that also opened. All 4 of those movies barely crossed the $20 million mark. That's how bad it was last weekend. A very concerning situation. I wish I could say Snow White is going to come in and save the day this weekend, but it's not looking good. I don't know how else to put it.
I mean, yeah, I've been seeing the reviews have been coming in. They've been, they've definitely been positive. The word of mouth has been strong. I think the best case scenario that it's looking like we can hope for with Disney's Snow White is a soft opening and then solid legs, a solid performance in Chase Weeks as people either, hear that the film is better than they thought from their friends, or, they're looking for something to do with their family, with young kids. But out of the gate, positive overperformance doesn't really seem like it's in the cards.
No, we're currently projecting a opening weekend between $45 and $55 million here in North America. Not the result we'd expect from a title like this. As Rebecca says, hopefully the good word of mouth and positive reviews can spur a comeback in subsequent weekends. Let's not forget, Mufasa, the Lion King story, is an exception in the world of soft opening weekends. It didn't have a record-breaking opening weekend. I think there are a lot of people wrote off that film, but through its own strength, Mufasa ended up growing to a $200 million plus grosser domestically.
Yeah, Daniel, I mean, you look at something like, as you mentioned, Mufasa, which had, let's just say, an underwhelming opening, 35.4 million. Obviously, it was over the Christmas holiday period, and a lot of films came out during that period. But now, months later, the film has 252 million domestically, across the 252 million mark.
Chad, we've heard from critics that the film's actually pretty good, that it works under its own merits. What's your take on this situation?
I'm historically not the biggest fan of the Disney live action movies. I think, Rebecca, you mentioned Cinderella, and I think that's my favorite one. That's the best one.
And that's real early. Yeah,
Kenneth Branagh directing. But, this has Pasek and Paul, who wrote the songs for The Greatest Showman, coming in, writing new material.
Another film that was a complete disappointment if you only look at opening weekend.
Right. Yeah, that's another movie that found its audience through its own merits in subsequent weeks.
Yeah, so I think if this has strong word of mouth, if it's a good story, if there's good songs, families are going to go see it because, like you said, Daniel, there's not much competition.
So that's the positive side of this movie. There is upside in the sense that it's well-reviewed. There's upside in that people that aren't eternally online, that aren't paying attention to the mini scandals, either fabricated, imagined, or possibly real that happened with this film, there is a possibility that this movie can perform, I think, above that, mid 50s range. There is also the downside that we have to say it. The PR disaster for this film is real. Whatever was said is warranted, a PR disaster or not. There is the perception, aided by Disney canceling press from attending the premiere events, that something is wrong here. It doesn't help the film when you have this aura of issues around it.
I don't understand how, part of the negative PR shroud, certainly not the entire thing, but part of it is that Rachel Zegler is Snow White and Gal Gadot as the evil stepmother don't get along and don't have anything in common. That should be a freaking plus. They're Snow White and the evil stepmother.
There's a lot of dumb criticism.
I hope that vibe to their relationship comes through in the film.
This is a great example of dumb online criticism then being amplified by actual political statements that both lead actresses made before they started publicity for the film. Would those political statements that I think any actor has the right to make, if they're not active, as long as they don't say it on the Tonight Show while they're promoting a film, they have a right to say it as private citizens, right? I think those statements were amplified by the fact that there was already an undercurrent of dumb online criticism about this movie. Now we're in the situation where instead of Disney trying to address it, they just, on the marketing sense, said no PR, no press welcome, no press available. So all of a sudden, Snow White isn't a story. The statements that anybody said before the marketing isn't the story. The PR disaster is the story. And that creates a bottom here that might go even lower than the $45 million floor that we have for this film. In our forecasting panel, I have numbers in the high 30s here from some folks in our forecasting panel. There are people in the industry that don't think this movie could even hit 40 million. This isn't something that is born out of a political statement or opinion. This is just people looking at their sales and saying, we have a real issue here. So the opening weekend, I do think, is in trouble. The overall performance of this film, I think we're going to have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to really be able to say what happened. And a total afterthought, including to the studio itself, The Alto Knights, a gangster film starring Robert De Niro, is apparently coming out this weekend. You wouldn't be able to guess by the lack of marketing campaign out there. As a result, we've got an opening weekend forecast between $3 and $5 million. Very low numbers. Listen, not ideal here, but if this Snow White movie opens in the mid-50s, that's what the entire slate did last weekend. So we will at least be in an upswing. That will continue as soon as we get into April. I know the Minecraft movie is trending positively. We're looking at numbers, I think, around $60 million plus for that opening weekend. So I am feeling better about how April is shaping up right now.
It's definitely worst weekend of 2025 so far. I'm not trying to say that we had a nice time of things at the box office last weekend from a sales perspective, but that is $50 million that cinemas otherwise would not have had. Like, these are the sorts of kind of niche mid-range movies from up-and-coming talent that we want people to have the opportunity to see in the
Exactly.
theaters.
We don't want to create the sort of industry where if something is tracking to a low opening weekend, it doesn't deserve a theatrical release. That is not at all what you're going to hear from this podcast or publication now or ever. We think this movie has a potential to have a long shelf life in theaters, compete for screens, but we are just merely telling folks out there, it's not going to be the opening weekend you want it to be. I think that is pretty safe so far. Let's move over here to the last piece of news, something that broke on Tuesday afternoon. The National Association of Theater Owners rebranding to a new name. They are now called Cinema United. No, it's not a soccer team. Sounds like a soccer team, but not a soccer team. Still the same old NATO that we know, but now they'll be known as Cinema United moving forward. Great timing as this comes out, rebrand weeks ahead of CinemaCon 2025.
See you at CinemaCon.
Oh, that's good.
There you go.
Look at that. That's not bad at all. All right, Chad, Rebecca, thank you again for another great analysis section here on the podcast. And now coming up after the break, as part of our UK Cinema Association Conference Week, we've got Sharon Reid from Cinema First going over some of the industry movie-going initiatives that Cinema First is devising and launching over in the UK. That is coming up after this break. And we are back here in this special UKCA edition of the Box Office Podcast. I'm with Sharon Reid, the Director of Marketing and Partnerships over at Cinema First. Sharon, welcome to the podcast. A lot to go over as a recap is probably a fair way of saying it. By the time this episode comes out, the UKCA conference would have happened. But we are recording this before it takes place, and Cinema First is just a great organization to talk to about everything UK cinema. You guys have a hand in a lot of the initiatives in making sure that moviegoers come back to cinemas in the UK and that they do so more frequently. So that's my first question. If you could help our listeners understand, what is Cinema First? What is some of its beginnings? And what is its role in the UK cinema industry?
Oh, hi, Daniel. Great to be here today. So, yes, I'm Sharon, and I work for Cinema First, which I'm going to say is a small and beautifully formed organisation that many people will not have heard of. It's not a customer-facing organisation, but actually it does perform some quite critical roles. So, its overarching mandate is around managing, nurturing, and developing positive cinema-going habits. So, getting people off sofas, chairs, out of their homes, wherever, to go to the cinema. So that's one of the things we do. And we work across the sector to do that in a very general sense. Cinema First is comprised, and I think we are quite a sort of special entity. It's comprised of representatives from both exhibition and distribution. And we get to meet on a very regular basis to talk about our ongoing concerns around the sector, where things are heading, where box office is heading, the slate, the economic environment, which may affect consumer behaviour, etc. We also talk positive things about, opportunities, and we look at maybe what current issues are and maybe how we might need to address them. So let's say there were issues with ongoing negative press with the mainstream media. Yes, that does actually happen. Or antisocial behaviour in our cinemas. Do we need some sort of directive, or do we need a united front to deal with that? So that's some of the stuff we do. I would say, though, that actually my day job is that I actually manage a fairly, special and unique partnership with the industry partner, which is a company called Compare the Market. And Compare the Market is a price comparison service, but what they do is they are the industry sponsor in the UK for cinema going. And what that means is that every Tuesday or a Wednesday, if you buy an eligible product, you can get a free cinema ticket through Meerkat Movies. So it's pretty cool. And I am effectively, unlike Switzerland, I sit in the middle of exhibition and distribution. And I was going to say Toblerone, but I don't know if you have Toblerone in the US. So I'm like Switzerland, I'm agnostic, I'm objective, and my job is to make sure the partnership, I want to sweat the asset. I want to make sure the partnership works really, really well for the industry and helping us in our wider aims of driving cinema going behaviours. That's Cinema First.
And I want to talk a little bit about the Meerkat Movies campaign now that you bring it up, because this is something, I don't know if it's completely unique to the UK cinema industry. I just haven't heard about this in many other markets existing. Certainly doesn't exist here in the US, where you partner with a private company to be a corporate sponsor of moviegoing. That seems like an extremely ambitious thing. And on top of it, you work with how many circuits and how many distributors to make sure that this Tuesday or Wednesday cinema ticket is valid across those cinemas.
I believe, and maybe it's because I'm very close to it and I think it's fairly amazing, I believe it is pretty unique in Europe and probably across the world. So Compare the Market is an insurance company. And I think insurance, just so you know, I'm insured up to my yin-yang, don't kill me anyone. But actually, insurance is very functional. We need it in all different walks of life, but it's not sexy from my personal perspective. And actually what is quite amazing is that somebody like Compare the Market have come to us and they like the properties, the inherent value of film and cinema going and that kind of mystical, magical nature of film. And they're looking at it and using it to engage their customers and reward their customers for choosing them they're effectively shopping with them. So it's pretty unique. I'm going to just say a big shout out for Meerkat Movies, as you happen to have asked me, because this year, and this is actually quite significant, this year is their 10th anniversary of Meerkat Movies. So it started in 2015. It's 10 years. It's coming up in a few weeks, the anniversary. But actually, it's about driving retention for them, driving brand fame and awareness of their products. And for us, it supports our wide objectives, our broad objectives, our core objectives, and getting people into our cinemas to see a range of films throughout the year. So, yeah, it is pretty special.
And what is the participation in terms of circuits and studios? Can it be a ticket to any cinema for any film, or are there certain restrictions?
You have to buy an eligible product from Compare the Market, but that product list is actually fairly broad as it happens. So that's happy days. We are mandated through our agreement, and I don't want to give too much away in terms of commercial whys and whats, and we are mandated that we have to have a certain reach in terms of participating cinemas, but actually we have the greater number of cinemas. We have large multiplexes, we have small boutique cinemas, we have independent, we have community cinemas across the whole of the UK and Northern and Ireland as well. So yeah, coverage is quite, I'm going to say ubiquitous. It's not 100% of the cinema going universe in the UK in our market, but it's quite ubiquitous.
I love those initiatives, especially when you get a buy-in from, let's say, a third party to say, I want to be part of the movie-going experience. I want to sponsor this and partner with something that cinemas do that create value and drive traffic on off-peak days. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are the hardest days for cinemas to make sure they get that occupancy rate up. So it's a win-win. I absolutely love that this is 10 years old.
You're right. Those are the slump days. But what is amazing is that people come, they see the value of having got this free ticket, this buy one ticket, effectively 2 for 1, get the other one free. But then they can go to the cinema and really max out on the experience. They can buy their wonderful, this is me probably, I'm talking about myself, buy their supersized popcorn. I love popcorn. Buy their drink or their nachos and sit and just have this amazing experience. And actually, so hopefully, it's driving incremental, we know because we track it, it drives incremental footfall on those days when cinemas wouldn't necessarily be busy, but also additional revenue from food and bev sales. So yeah, it's good.
Now, another program that Cinema First is involved in is National Cinema Day. And this is a concept that has evolved over the years, especially post-pandemic. It's a concept that has been tried here in the US on and off in the post-pandemic period. It's still getting tweaked. I think the US version is still being perfected. That's why I like to look at what you guys are doing in the UK. And by the way, this is something that exists in many European markets, and National Cinema Day. But the way you guys have approached it in the UK, I think is a great success story as well. Could you speak about that evolution of National Cinema Day to where it is today and the role it plays in the UK film industry?
Well, I'll definitely give it my best shot. We have done 3 National Cinema Days, and we did it off the back, as many initiatives suddenly got reborn or repositioned or revitalized off the back of COVID and those lockdown situations. So, we in 2021 did a big Back to Cinema campaign, and then it was still a bit, what else are we going to do? What do we need to do to get people back in our cinemas? So we thought we would do a National Cinema Day. Now, just in terms of context, the UK had actually done a National Cinema Day back in 1994.
Oh, wow.
But it had been rested. So, and I think then tickets were priced at £1. And I think it's just, so there was a big hiatus, but we'd seen fantastic growth in box office and admissions in the interim. So we hadn't ever done a National Cinema Day. But of course, COVID was the great disruptor, as we all know. So we embarked on a journey at Cinema First to bring National Cinema Day back. I don't think it's rocket science. We did it for a number of very important founding principles. We wanted to re-engage customers who had clearly had a break in their cinema going habit. We wanted to encourage people to try that out of home in cinema experience, because actually you might have a flat screen, massive screen at home, but it's actually not the same as being in a cinema. It really isn't. We wanted to obviously use it to showcase the breadth of content that was coming down the line. So, people could think, oh, that would be great. Oh, that could be cool. I wanted to see that. So again, just really start to lock stuff into people's memories. And we wanted to really prompt future bookings. I mean, at the end of the day, it's driving awareness and prompting bookings. And I think actually for us, It's a massive celebration, and it has continued to be, and we want to build on it being a celebration of the big screen experience. Yeah, and remind audiences what they've been missing. So we have sustained and built on that over the last 3 events we've run. They've all been quite different, but all been quite successful. So that's brilliant. But in line with what you were saying about what's happened in the US, we don't want this to be seen. We want to iterate it. We want to see how we can make it a massive event, a cultural event, a phenomenon, a bit like World Book Day, for instance. I mean, I'm not advocating that I'm going to go to my cinema dressed up as Pippi Longstocking or anything. That would be dreadful. But what I mean is people get involved. It captures people's hearts and minds and imagination, and people get involved and look out for it. So we are looking at how we might make it bigger and better this year. And actually to do that, it means that we engage our members, our exhibition and distribution members, to see what good might look like and what better might look like. We'd want it to be less of a price comparison service and more of a cultural experience, I've said. So we are learning as we go, is what I will say. We work together to A, set the date, B, think about what the price might be, because price clearly is a factor in everything we do, but also think about what that overall experience is going to be. We've learned along the way. So what we learned across our events is that each one had significant awareness and higher awareness than the previous one. So again, very good. Content is king. And actually, if you have significant titles at the time of National Cinema Day happening, people will come in their droves. And I think we need to be clever and creative and dynamic in our programming to woo various demographic groups into our cinemas. We can't just keep playing a title because it's done particularly well, because people want new content. So I think that was the one thing we learned. It's in our interest to work together as a sector to deliver an optimum experience for this event, for this day. And I think that's been an important thing, because through that we create great social dialogue and awareness and talkability and action, people coming to the cinema. So for us, it's been a very steep but fun learning curve. And I think there's more exciting things to come, is what I will say.
When did the last edition take place?
It was on the 31st of August last year. And actually, we were happy. We had a much more ubiquitous advertising campaign. We had countdowns on social. We created really fantastic a suite of digital assets. We did radio advertising, and we got some really good cut through in terms of press and PR. So I would say it was a success, but I think there is always room for improvement. I don't think any of us can rest on our laurels, not least because we are a sector that is still recovering from COVID. I hate to hark back to COVID, but we are a sector in recovery. We are getting better, but there's still a little bit of work to do. So we need to harness all our creative energies to make sure that whatever we do lands really well with our prospective audiences.
As you mentioned, the date is something that's open, right? It's not something that is seasonal, that it's going to be at the end of summer or in the first quarter. It's something that every year you guys decide when is the most strategic opportunity to put this. And when do you promote? Because here in the US, when it has happened, nobody wanted to promote the date too early in fear of cannibalizing pre-sales or bookings.
Yeah.
So everybody was really mum. Everything was under super embargo. Everyone in the industry knew. But then you had maybe like a week-long blitz in trying to get as much media as possible for that date. It's traditionally been a Sunday at the end of the summer or in the early fall. What's that been like for you guys, that marketing push once you get the date in?
I mean, I have to say, I think we have experienced a similar situation. It's that balancing act of promoting it and building excitement, but not cannibalizing the hell out of it. So we have also adopted a very short window to promote. But actually for us, if we are looking for external partners or sponsors to promote this, to own this initiative, as it were, we have also been quite realistic that we might need to have a level of flexibility and openness to broadening that communications window. So last year, we were very lucky. We had a range of partners. We had Millie's Cookies, we had Bolt, who really promoted it through their channels and got great traction and cut through, and actually had a bit of fun with the branding and the experience. So yeah, I think the timeline is challenging, I'm not going to lie. If the right sponsor came along, we would definitely be open to extending that window of opportunity.
Something you're mentioning right now that is a huge difference in this approach is corporate sponsorship. If you have corporate partners that can turn on their marketing activations, it makes a world of difference in the number of people you reach within this time frame. I think it's a key component that, at least here in the US, it's still being tweaked. We have a couple of theme days this year, nothing centralized, but the way that it's been able to evolve since the pandemic lockdowns in the UK, I think is a great success story and one that Cinema First is directly involved in. Now, you're also involved in industry research, coming up with industry insights. You guys have a dashboard that you're monitoring, making different reports in understanding that audience. And it's something that I always talk about in this industry, how in the last 10, 15 years, data and data marketing has really revolutionized the way we look at reaching audiences. But there's a massive challenge, and that challenge is called data silos, meaning that everybody's got data, but everybody keeps that data. Nobody shares, and we're all walking blind with things that we overhear or that we assume that other people have. It makes it impossible. Now, what I love about Cinema First is you guys have a centralized data platform that is available to your industry partners for everyone to be in the same footing. Can you go over what that initiative looks like?
Data and insights is obviously, as we all know, incredibly important. We should always, I'm a marketeer, I believe we should be insight-led. We just can't keep just shooting from the hip and hoping it's going to land effectively. The research work that is managed and initiated by Cinema First, basically, and you've just hit the nail on the head, it has enabled us to gain relevant inputs, and then which can then be fed into wider industry marketing plans. So I think that is it. And if I'm very honest, it provides our members with one version of the truth. What's happening, a snapshot in time, a window into our cinema goers' lives. So it's great. And you're quite right. Everyone's researching, but actually, a time when we are all fighting for the hearts and minds of our customers or cinema goers, we need to work effectively together. There needs to be a level of flexibility and trust. And I think what we have started to do with our insights, which we have been doing since 2020, again, who knew COVID would have so many benefits? But actually what it did do, we realized the landscape was massively changing. We realized that actually, as ourselves, we were really concerned by what we were seeing, hearing, and in some cases experiencing. And we wanted to understand, but we knew cinemas would obviously reopen. We just didn't know when. But fundamentally, we didn't know how people would feel going back into a cool, dark room with strangers watching a film. What would we have to do to reassure them? What would their concerns be? So,
well, maybe don't call it a cool, dark room with strangers to begin with, Sharon. Maybe there's another way we can phrase it.
Oh, yeah. A lovely, comfortable, luxury room with
there we go. That sounds
the same objectives as you. They want to be immersed in film. You're absolutely right. But we did start it as a result of that. And it was a very odd time, wasn't it? Everything was changing so quickly. But for instance, one of the things that happened was that as a result, we developed a range of proactive materials, both static and animated, for use by cinemas to drive home and reinforce in cinema safety protocols that had been implemented, reassuring customers, promoting them, engaging with the media, said that actually we are taking a very proactive stance on safety because we know this is really, really important to our audiences, our cinema-going audiences. We started it in 2020 and we were doing 2 or 3 waves a year. And we have now carried out, as at last August 24, 20 waves of tracking research. Now that is quite a commitment. I think why it's interesting is it's enabled us to look at our cinema-going audience and assess how many people across the UK and the Republic of Ireland, how many have come back and got back into their cinema-going habits. And we are happy to say that actually around 83% of our cinema-going audience that we've been tracking have come back to cinema. So good news. Great news. I think the other thing we've tracked is we've been tracking the level of optimism that people have generally, just in terms of their world, and there's COVID and that time was very doom and gloom. The economic recession, doom and gloom. There's been quite a lot of stuff that people have had to get through. But actually what we notice that people generally have become more optimistic as time has gone on, although there are challenges, not least economic challenges. And therefore, the other reason is that people are probably going to the cinema less than they were. And one of the main reasons for that is, I suppose, the ongoing cost of living crisis. The world is pretty volatile, right? We've got Ukraine, we've got, things happening in Israel, we've got, there's a lot of very not nice stuff happening for people, and the markets are sensitive and we are sensitive. We are aware that cinema is a very popular out-of-home experience and continues to be, but actually there are demands on what people do out of home, going to the pub, going for a walk, reconnecting with friends and family, going to the gym, etc. So
that's who we're competing against, really.
Yeah, so
I get tired of the narrative that cinema is competing with streaming. I think you just mentioned it now. Cinema is competing with anything you do outside the house. And if it's a beautiful day, you know what? I don't blame you if you want to go for a nice walk in the park. A lot of people would.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So, and what that tells us is that we, as a sector, have to work hard. We can't take our foot off the pedal. We need to work in a really consistent and sustained way to talk to our cinema-going audience and to talk to people that have become lapsed, who haven't been going to the cinemas regularly. And the thing that I find maybe it's not surprising, maybe it's just me, I'm easily shockable, but actually, you get into a habit and it's great and it's easy to get into a habit, but actually once you lapse from that habit, getting people back into it is actually quite difficult. Mm-hmm. So we need to be very clear about how we target and retarget customers to get them back in. And I think that has been one of the most important things we've learned. The other thing we've learned, I think, is that slate knowledge is getting better. People have a higher awareness of what's coming out, new releases. However, the perennial challenge is that if people are not going to the cinema or not going as regularly, saving themselves for that one big film, be it Gladiator 2 or Wicked or whatever it is, then we need to make sure that we have our channel mix right to talk to respective audiences, to get them in both in tone, both in timing and frequency, and just in terms of channel. And I think that's something we need to do. It's not let's just throw everything at everybody. It's got to be much more targeted. So I think the insights have really given us a lot to work on and a lot that we can improve. But you are right. The thing that Cinema First does is, I'm lucky enough that I actually chair, that sounds very grand, but I sit with an amazing group of people across the sector on the Cinema First Insights group. And those are representatives from a subset of exhibitors and distributors. And it's fantastic. We talk about what we want to do next and what research we want and where there are gaps and what we're trying to assess. So it's not whimsical. We have quite a sustained approach to insights and will continue to do so going forward.
Well, Sharon, thank you so much for your time and everything you've shared here. That is Sharon Reid from Cinema First joining us here on the Boxoffice Podcast.
And a big thank you to Sharon Reid for joining us here in the podcast. Earlier, you heard from Pahle and Chad Kennerk from Boxoffice Pro. I'm Daniel Loria, and I'd like to thank you once again for all your support. Our special CinemaCon edition of this podcast begins next Thursday with a special guest, Cinema United President and CEO Michael O'Leary, talking about the big rebrand, the big event, and everything else in the world of theatrical and everything else happening in the world of theatrical exhibition. So don't forget to subscribe to get every part of our CinemaCon Week podcast series that starts next Thursday. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.